Of the Office of Diversity and Inclusion Management at the New York State Department of Civil Service, and we are the office that administers the agency's 55B and C program, which I know that many people know a lot about. I know there are a lot of questions about. Hopefully, as we go through the presentation today, we'll be able to clarify questions and answer any questions that you all may have and give a little bit more information about our programs. But before we dive into the 55B and C program specifically, I want to talk a little bit about one of our larger agency initiatives, which is workforce demographic data and the importance of self-disclosure when people, candidates, and employees have the opportunity. So for those of you who don't know, we have a statewide self-disclosure workforce demographic data collection form that can be accessed online. It can be accessed by speaking to your human resources officer at individual agencies. It's referred to as the DPM 100 form. It's just an old title, but the data on that form is really powerful and really important. So we've done some massive updates to our demographic data collection process this year and increased the categories that we're tracking when it comes to gender, race, ethnicity, veteran status, and we've streamlined our data collection processes for individuals with disabilities. So that question is now included on this DPM 100 form, on the self-disclosure form. And we really want to take a moment to talk about why it's important to disclose, right? Because it is self-disclosure, so if individuals do not identify themselves in any number of the categories, including that of disability, then we're not going to have the data as a state to work with. And we are very huge proponents of the philosophy that what can be measured can be managed. So when we ask for demographic data and we encourage people to self-disclose, the purpose of that is so that we have the data to inform strategies and initiatives to affect the individual communities that we're taking a look at. So even though that form captures data for tons of different communities, it's the key going forward for us capturing data on a statewide basis about the people that are applying for and being hired into careers in state government. So any opportunity you get to fill out that form, sometimes you have the opportunity, you can actually, any member of the public can go on our website right now if they have a ny.gov account and put their information in there so that if they are taking an exam in the future or hired to a position in the future, we'll already have that information there. And again, having that data there is really critical and important to us as a state being able to track, who is applying for opportunities, right? Who is applying for exams, who's actually sitting to take exams, who are we losing in between those two steps, and also who is being hired and who we may be losing. And as we look and analyze that data, again, we can advance strategies and come up with the strategies to really make meaningful changes that affect the communities involved, including, and most importantly, because we're talking about today, individuals with disabilities. So it's just a very high-level overview of what we're doing, but I really want to stress, again, the importance of whenever you have the opportunity to disclose demographic information, we definitely encourage you to do that. It's a confidential process, but it's really central and foundational to the work that we're trying to do from a diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility perspective from New York State. So with that said, I'm going to turn things over to LaShawna King, who is the supervisor over our 55B and C unit. I also want to point out to you all who may or may not know, these three individuals that you see standing here, LaShawna King, Nicole Harden, and Samad Ratib, are the 55B and C unit. So everything, all the process, all the phone calls, everything is being handled by these three individuals. They work incredibly hard. We're going to open things up for questions at the end, so we're ready for your questions and your suggestions. And like our commissioner challenged you earlier, if you have ideas, right, it's okay to let us know. It's okay to let us know what is working. It's okay to let us know what's not working, because we believe in continuous improvement and we want to make sure that we are meeting the needs of the communities that we serve. So with that said, LaShawna, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Director. Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. My name is LaShawna King. I'm the team leader for the 55BC program. As Nicole Keith said, this is our units, right? So there are 2 million disabled folks in New York State, and this is our unit. This is Mr. Samad Ratib. Any email you send, my friends, he's the one answering. He handles every single application coming in and out, every single letter of eligibility coming in and out. Last year, we did over 1,900 letters, maybe. I'm maybe down by 100 or so, but Samad handles them all, and I wanted to recognize him because there's just three of us. Then we have Ms. Nicole Harden. Once you get in the program through Samad's letter of eligibility, she's the person that handles every single transaction across the state. So any 55B candidate moving, promoting, appointing, anything comes all through Nicole. And then finally me. After she gets all the things, I get to review everything and make sure that all the transactions meet civil service technical requirements. We sign off on them, and then we move on. So that is our unit, and we're going to give you an overview of the 55BC. But first, I'm going to take a poll in the audience. Who all doesn't know anything about 55BC? Raise your hand. Okay, that's good. It's because we use a lot of acronyms, and I want to be inclusive of the folks in the room and make sure you all know what we're talking about. All right, and so with that stated, we'll get started. And because this is a small group, I'm going to walk around. If you have a question, I'll give you the microphone and you ask it, and let's have a round table, right? All right, go for it.
Okay. I am Nicole Harden. Like LaShawna said, I am living proof that the 55BC program does work because I came in under the 55C side of it. So that is one of the biggest things that we hear a lot about, that what happens to the program doesn't work. I'm here to tell you that it does, not only because I'm here, but because I do process the appointments that we appoint individuals via 55BC every month. So what we're going to talk about today is we're going to give you an introduction of the program, components, requirements, and eligibility criteria. We're going to talk about the 55BC current program statistics, the program portal and application selection process, and finding New York State vacancies. So as we go along, because there is a small group here, if you have a question, please let us know, and we'll be happy to answer it as we go. All right, so the governor's program to hire individuals and veterans with disabilities. The governor's program to hire individuals and veterans with disabilities, known as the 55B and the 55C programs, respectively allows qualified individuals with disabilities and veterans with disabilities to be appointed by state agencies to entry-level competitive class civil service positions without a written examination. 55BC program's intent and philosophy. So 55B and 55C are the same program, but they're for two different entities, okay? So 55B, commonly referred to as the 55B program, authorizes the Civil Service Commission, CSC, to determine up to 1,700 positions. So if you do know about this program, and before you saw the 1,200 positions, that actually was up to 1,700 positions this year, to be filled by persons with a physical or mental disability who are found otherwise qualified to perform satisfactorily the duties of any such positions. Section 55C is for the veterans, and that authorizes the CSC, Civil Service Commission, to determine up to 500 positions such as can be performed by veterans with disabilities. Upon such determination by the CSC, Civil Service Commission, the positions are placed in that non-competitive class and may be filled by a person who has been certified by DCS, Department of Civil Service, as being 55BC eligible. So I just want to elaborate on this really quick. So when it says 1,700 positions, there are not 1,700 positions or 500 positions that are waiting for you when you receive your letter of eligibility. The program is a self-directed program, and you do have to look for a position that you meet the minimum qualifications for, apply for the position, interview for the position, and then if you're selected, you will be appointed to that position. I like to say it's an item that's being switched from competitive to non-competitive. It's on a first-come, first-served basis with the agencies. So if, let's say, civil service this month decides that they want to hire a human resources specialist 1, and what will happen is it'll go before the Civil Service Commission. in that competitive position, that item number will be switched over to a non-competitive, and that's where those numbers come into play, okay? So, entry-level title, I don't know about you, but when I came into the program, that scared me. I was coming out of the military. I was in charge of, or responsible for over 6,000 persons' lives, making sure that they got from point A to point B without hitting anything with the ship. I was responsible for marking our courses, and I was a human GPS for United States military ships. So my big head, I came out and I'm like, I am not doing office work. I should be in charge of something. And I have a master's degree, so when I was approached about the program, I completely turned it down at first, and then I found out what the meaning of an entry-level title is. So there is nothing wrong with being an office assistant, whatever your minimum qualifications are. But if you do have a master's degree or a law degree, or if you have your RN, whatever the case may be, what it is any title for which an open competitive examination is held and the promotion list, if one exists, has been exhausted. So for instance, this is an Office Assistant 1 is entry level to that title series. So the title series is Office Assistant 1, Office Assistant 2, Office Assistant 3. Entry level would be the Office Assistant 1, and it would be the same thing for a Human Resources Specialist 1, a Human Resources Specialist 2, and a Human Resources Specialist 3. I think you kind of get the point of where I'm going with this. Titles normally filled through open competitive and/or transition examinations, such as senior attorney, you have to meet the minimum qualifications for, promotion, 1 year of permanent competitive service as an assistant attorney, or open competitive admission to the New York State Bar, and 2 years of subsequent professional legal experience. And positions for which there are formal traineeships. I keep referring to the Human Resources Specialist, 1, because that is one of the known traineeships that we have, and that would be the Human Resources Trainee 1 and Trainee 2. And then again, the title series, Human Resources Specialist 2 to the Human Resources Specialist 3. So candidate requirements. Do you want to take this one over?
All right, so the candidate requirements for a position, right? You have to meet the minimum qualifications for that title and that position, right? And that includes the minimal mental and physical requirements for the job, right? There are no exceptions to that. So I say all that to say, if the requirement to be an attorney means that you have to take the bar exam, you have to take the bar exam, right? We can't make substitutions for that. Next. So what qualifies you as 55B eligible, right? Because there's 2 buckets. There's 55B disabled, 55C veterans. So any one of those criteria will consider you 55B. So when we say consider you, what that means is, and I'm jumping ahead, when you get to the application process, you have to submit medical documentation that speaks to your disability, and that gets reviewed by us. It does not get reviewed by us. It gets reviewed by Employee Health Services. That's that acronym EHS. So when EHS looks at it, they are the ones that are making the determination. Next. 55C, a little bit different, right? So 55C, your disability rating from the VA has to be 10% or more. You can provide us records that say you have a pending claim of an illness from the military. If you received a Purple Heart, that's automatic eligibility into the program. And if you successfully completed a VA drug, alcohol treatment, and rehabilitation program, we'll take those records as well. Next. I cannot see. I have to go this way. All right, so this just talks more about what is required for 55C, what the definition is in accordance with the ADA, what documentation you need from the Veterans Affairs demonstrating your period and character of service. You don't have to have a requirement to serve during a time of war. And that's new. When I started with the state 1,000 years ago, I'm going on 24 years, you had to have like a wartime requirement. And Nicole said something earlier that I wanted to mention. She said 55 BC program works for her. Civil service works for me, right? I've been everything, 6, 9, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, 18, 23, 25. So when you're in the program or you're in civil service, it works if you work it, right? Next. Restoration of Honor Act. So in 2019, the Restoration of Honor Act was signed into law with New York State. Basically, it says that if you were in the military and your sexual identity was revealed, you would be dishonorably discharged. New York says, no, we're going to reverse that, right? So if you were dishonorably discharged for any one of those conditions, you provide us documentation, and we will admit you into the program as well. Am I missing anything? Oh, right. So you would get your letter from the VA, not from us. So if you were dishonorably discharged and you went through ROHA to get honorably discharged, it doesn't come through us. That letter comes through the VA. Next.
Sorry, and then it doesn't restore your federal VA benefits, it restores your statewide benefits, so being able to utilize your veteran points towards examinations, being able to apply for the 55C program, that's what that is in regards to. We have a question.
I'm coming. I don't want you to run to yell. We want to hear you. Nah, I believe you.
The question, I apologize, I should have asked earlier. The C program uses the ADA list of disabilities, but the B does not. Is that correct? Because the list that you had up on that slide was not all of the ADA. So maybe we could clarify that, because I think it is all-inclusive now, right?
I'm coming, Nicole. You can clarify the C part. But the list is up there. It's not an exhaustive list, of course. But
As LaShawna said, the 55, and I'll go back a couple of slides here. So this is just a breakdown of disabilities and impairments that are, what's the best word to use? That are not just recognized, but they're automatically approved. Like if you're legally blind and you have your letter from the Commission of the Blind stating that you are legally visually impaired, that will sustain. And then the same thing with hearing impairments, musculoskeletal. So these are just some examples of givens. We're not doctors, so we do not tell anybody that they can't apply for the program based off of what their disability is, or they feel that how their impairment hinders their day-to-day life activities. This is just a short, brief example. So we still do forward on. So if somebody calls me and they ask me, I have an impairment, I have arthritis, let's say, and do I qualify for the program? Well, I can't tell you if you apply for the program, if you qualify for the program, but what I can tell you is if you feel that it hinders your day-to-day life activity, apply for the program, and we'll submit it to the doctor, and the doctor will make that determination based on what you submitted. So that is what is for the 55B. For the 55C, their VA record, that they require a 10% rating from the VA. It could be something completely different from something that they endured from the military that may not be a disability for an individual who is, I keep wanting to use the word civilian because that's the military in me, so, but with individuals with disabilities. So I hope that answered your question. Okay, we have another question. Okay. Employee Health Services? Correct. No problem. Yes.
How are you? I have a question. It says a permanent disability. Why is it if somebody has a permanent disability, does the 55B letter expire and they have to go through the whole process over again? If it's documented that it's a permanent disability, then why does it expire?
That's a great question, something that we get all the time. So the 55 BC, whether you're a B or you're a C, or if you have a permanent disability or a temporary disability, everybody is required to renew their eligibility every 3 years. Now, just because you're required to renew your eligibility every 3 years doesn't mean you have to reapply for the program. Unfortunately, if you allow your eligibility to expire, our system automatically deactivates your record. We cannot make any adjustments to your record within 90 days of the date of the expiration of your eligibility letter. So if you, let's say, at 92 days, remember that your eligibility expired, and I go in to renew your eligibility, unfortunately, you're going to have to resubmit a new application and do the whole process all over again, whether or not your disability is permanent or temporary. Everybody's required at the 3 years because some people do not want to utilize the program anymore after 3 years because maybe they felt that it wasn't beneficial to them, or maybe they felt that, oh, I got a job, I don't need it anymore. Unfortunately, yeah. Go ahead.
And it also helps us to update our databases, right? Because oftentimes folks may use, and this just happened, so this is ripped right off the headlines. I had an individual who applied for the 55B program when they were working at tax. And the email they had access to at tax, that was the email they gave. Now, 3 years later, and we're saying, do you want to renew? Is everything the same? Even though we had on the record that her condition was permanent, she said, yes, I want to keep everything the same. Her address was different, her email address was different. So those every 3 years, it's not necessarily that you have to apply all over again, it's so that we can keep our internal databases current, because we email you all the letter of eligibility. When your letter of eligibility is expiring, we will email you. So if we don't have the correct email address, you will never know, and then you'll find out when you're ready for a job opportunity that your letter expired a year ago. Now you have to apply all over again. So we make it as easy as we can for renewals, and we're very flexible as well. Here you go.
All right. Did that answer your question? Do you?
Now, what about during COVID? Wasn't that process extended? Were letters extended after 3 years due to COVID?
No.
No?
It's always been every 3 years.
Okay.
Okay? Yes.
There.
If you are on the if you are a part of the 55 BC program, you'll have access to the recruitment resource portal, and you can update your information there. But unfortunately, you have to contact us directly for name change, address change, email change, because the two systems aren't connected directly. So our tracking system isn't is not connected directly to your New York State ID or the recruitment resource portal.
Okay.
Okay?
Hi. Once you get the 55B or 50C eligibility and you obtain an entry-level position, do you necessarily have to renew? Or because once you have the position, you have it, right? Unless you're going to go for another entry-level position somewhere else.
Our recommendation to you is to keep your eligibility active because you do not know if on down the line that there's a position that you can transfer into or that there's another position that is a lateral transfer, whatever the case may be. In order for you to transfer into any 55BC position, you need to have an active eligibility letter. So I recommend everybody to keep their eligibility letters active so that they do not need to reapply all over again when they're like, there's this position I want, and oh, you need an active eligibility letter. I need it tomorrow because the deadline's tomorrow, and we can't make that turnaround happen. So keep your eligibility letter active as soon as the time frame within that 90 days. Again, we send an automated email out 90, 60, and 30 days prior to the expiration of your eligibility letter, and it's done via email. So you want to make sure whatever email that you have access to is the email that we have on file. Yes.
One other quick, HR departments in state agencies. There is one, right? There's an HR department for every state agency?
Correct.
And are they linked to your system, or could they be? Because it sounds like there's a lot of electronic stuff going on, and one would want to believe that everybody has access to all the stuff that we need, right? But perhaps looking forward as we revisit how B and C and civil service in being a same state might be a possibility to help those HR departments support the workforce that is coming in through your B and C. You didn't have that before, but perhaps in this new look at things, we could perhaps, connect you better to the HR department staff and help them understand how to build a connection so that this renewal process doesn't come as a surprise, but that somebody actually is working with you guys to actually make sure that the workforce continues. Just a suggestion. I mean, it's not something that I think gets talked about a lot. You guys have had to achieve what you do all by yourself, and maybe there's a partnership that could be built between the state HR directors and you.
So just a little bit of feedback on that, if you don't mind. Later on in the slideshow, we have always had access for HR departments to reach the recruitment resource portal so that they can do a search for candidates that meet the minimum qualifications for the positions that they're looking for, right? Now, so that is one aspect. Now, the other aspect about renewing their eligibility letter, the onus is on the candidate or their advocate to renew their eligibility letter. It's not the responsibility of the agency. An agency cannot reach out to me and ask the status of, an agency HR cannot ask the status of a 55BC eligibility letter. They cannot submit the application on behalf of the candidate unless we have a release from that candidate stating that they authorize this HR person to do so, but then that becomes a conflict of interest as well. So the onus for the renewals is on the individual who is 55BC eligible, and they can see when they log into the recruitment resource portal that when their eligibility expires, it actually gives the actual countdown to the expiration of their letter, even if they do not receive their even if they do not receive the email. So either their advocate or they themselves will need to renew their eligibility letter. Okay?
Yeah, Nicole, you all may get to this later, but one of the biggest misconceptions is once you have an eligibility letter, I understand it that you can get in at the entry level. There are some candidates who believe then they just automatically get the promotion and the promotion and the promotion, but I believe the program says once you're in without a test or on a non-competitive basis, the way to promotion is just the same as everyone else's ability to be promoted. Is that correct?
So it's a loaded question. Thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah. In part,
Correct,
yes.
in part, my friend. So the original intent in the program, when I started, was one and done, right? You got your letter of eligibility, you got in the door at a entry-level position, which was at the time a grade 5, and that was it. But the program is more flexible, because what we were hearing from advocates was, you know, they just needed to take a job just to get food on the table, and they shouldn't be stuck at this level when maybe they have a master's degree or whatever they have, right? So we made it a little bit more flexible. So we allow for subsequent transactions, which would be promotions, if you will, as long as they meet civil service technical requirements. So it's the same for 55B as it is the same for non-55BC, right? You can either test out, or you can, if the position, like say the person was in a grade 13, right? Now they're able to get into a traineeship. They can use that letter of eligibility to get in a traineeship, same like on the state side of town, the non-55 BC side of town, the competitive side. Thank you. So it is a loaded question, and everything is case by case, because we have to look at the title that they're in, the title they're going to. Do they meet the minimum qualifications? Staffing has to sign off on it. So it's a complicated process, but to answer your question, it is not one and done anymore. Did that help? Did that answer your question? Okay, good. Go ahead, Simone. Go for it.
So for finding jobs, you can only apply for non-competitive 55BC jobs. Is that in the 55BC portal, or do you have to look through competitive jobs to find that? How does that work?
So we have, maybe you want to fast forward to that. So we'll fast forward to a slide that has the state job website on it. So you would start looking at, if you're not a state employee, you would look at state jobs for the public side, right? Mostly all of our positions are 55BC qualified, right? You can apply for it as long as you have the minimum qualifications. For every single position that you apply for, you have to submit your letter of eligibility. And the reason being, and it's not for the interview panel to know, there's some internal mechanisms behind the scene that just tells HR how to process certain transactions. So you would go on that. General public, you would click there, and then you can sort it by county, which is what I usually do. I sort by county when I'm helping folks. You can sort by grade. You can even, if you say, you know, I want to work for OCFS, you can put in OCFS in a search bar, and every position in OCFS will pop up. But that's where you would find all those jobs.
So any public job can be a 55BC job? It's not like a set, like these are the only jobs that can be non-competitive?
As I trip over.
Transactions answer that question.
As long as it's an open competitive, there's an open competitive examination for the position, you can apply for it. It's not, we are working towards having every agency put in their vacancy announcement that it is a 55BC eligible position, but it's slow and happening agency by agency, but it is happening. So if it does not say that you are, that it's 55BC eligible, please do not let that steer you away from applying for the position. Continue forward with applying for the position if there is an open competitive examination for it. And also, I do want to note, we do have a video tutorial live on our website, or sorry, on YouTube, that goes step by step through how to do a job search as well.
Thank
Okay.
you.
You're welcome. All right. Any other yes.
I'm sorry, I have a low voice. Do people on work visas qualify for 55B and C?
Yes, they would. No problem. Short and to the point. Yes. All right, any other questions? And, oh, we have one more. Okay.
So I work with students at the high school level, and I'm just wanting to know how I can best prepare them and their families for the application process. Some of my students will not get a traditional diploma, and some will. So how would that apply to 55B here? Are there positions that don't require a formal diploma?
So that is position specific. It's not specific to the actual program itself. So anybody can apply for the 55BC program, whether they have a traditional or non-traditional degree, or if they do not have one. And then when it comes to applying for positions, again, it goes back to the minimum qualifications for that position. There are positions that do not have minimum qualifications for that are available and are entry-level positions. But again, that's agency by agency, position by position.
Can you give me an example of a job that would not require the high school diploma?
I wouldn't, not off the top of my head. Huh. Oh, probably a laborer, but you would not need your 55BC eligibility for labor class positions.
Sure. I just wanted to jump in also to note that civil service as a whole, one of the things that we're looking at are the education requirements and the minimum requirements with all of our positions, right? Because part of our diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility objectives are to examine and create opportunities where opportunities and where things and doors have been closed before. And a lot of times that goes back to looking at the educational requirements and determining whether or not they are truly necessary to do the job. So that is part of a larger effort that we're doing as an agency, but the 55BNC program, you know, it will impact people and opportunities available through this program as well. So just want to put that plug in.
Yes. I'm actually getting ready to go there right now. That's where I went to. So if you see here, we have the website www.cs.ny.gov/RP55, and that will take you to the 55BC side of civil service. Inside of an application packet, it's different for 55Bs and 55Cs. For 55Bs, you will need a full application completed, and that application consists of all of the initial questions, which I'll show you on the website here. You can click on how to apply, and it will scroll automatically down to where it says 55BC program application, and you can do a Word doc or a PDF and click on it, and it will take you to the application. And then the full application for a 55B will be the page 1, the physician's questionnaire, the DPM one. This is the military service, which is on here, which we did remove that requirement for wartime, a wartime requirement. So you don't have to serve in a wartime capacity in order to be eligible for 55C. And we recommend you emailing. So for a full-fledged packet, you will have, the application, your current resume, and then for a 55B. And in the application, again, the most important part of the application is the physician's questionnaire, which is this form right here.
Number 5, ladies and gentlemen, is the most important question on that application.
So question number 5 is what stumps the doctors. This is not filled out by you. This is filled out by your doctor. It's going to be your name and your social security number on there, not the doctor's name and the doctor's license number. You believe it or not, we do get that a lot. And then questions 1, 2, 2A, and then 3 are important, obviously, but the questions that are the most important is for the prognosis, if it's permanent, long-term, if the applicant is expected to recover. And then question 5, how the impairment limits the applicant's major life activities. So we did away a few years ago with the personal statement, so that's no longer required for the application. So in lieu of that, the doctor over at Employee Health Services needs more detail as to what the disability is and how it impairs or hinders your day-to-day life activities. So anybody who calls me and asks for if their application was kicked back because they had insufficient information and the doctor at Employee Health Services needed more information, I always recommend them to look at it from this point of view. It's your doctor writing a personal statement on your behalf. And then, so this is what the impairment is, this is how it hinders my patient's everyday life activities. These are this is the path of least resistance, and these are the reasonable accommodations, so this individual can be successful in everyday life. It's a short amount of space, a tiny amount of space, but you can add an additional page if you need to, or if you want to submit additional documentation, you can do that as well, but it's not required. Okay.
Is the doctor who's reviewing this, I mean, I know that they're a doctor, so they obviously have medical training, but do they get any training in the ADA and like the, you know, I'm serious, like, and the applicability to employment and stuff? Like, yeah, because you can be a doctor and not necessarily understand how the ADA works or how it affects employment or what reasonable accommodations may or may not be appropriate. So I'm just wondering if they get any training in that before they're making these decisions.
So the doctor that is working at Employee Health Services, he's been working with Employee Health Services in the 55C BC unit for the better of 20 years, possibly, maybe even more. So much so that he retired, left, came back, works part-time, and that's how come our process has slowed down a little bit, because he is the most knowledgeable when it does come to that, but he is trained on the ADA. So, and he's very, he's actually probably pretty lenient, I would say, when it does come to that. It's kicked back a lot of times for things like there's no impairment. And so if your doctor's writing there's no impairment, the doctor has every reason to believe that you do not qualify for the program. So it's just, it really depends on what your doctor is writing in there, more or less.
And one other question, is this connected, like, would this make it easier for somebody who might need, like, for example, medical parking at their wherever they're based for the
No, so the 55BC program is separate from a reasonable accommodation. The 55BC program does give you your letter of eligibility, which waives your requirement to take a state examination. However, once you get into the position, if you need a reasonable accommodation, you will have to request that through your agency and go through the reasonable, correct. Mm-hmm. Yes. Sure. No problem.
So I was just going to ask, what is the outreach and the and this might be a different question, but or just spread of information for this? Because I also used to work in guidance as a in high school setting and then at a vocational program, and I feel like there's a lot of people who really could have benefited from this knowledge, and I wasn't aware of it, and I just was wondering about what we're doing in terms of outreach and just general knowledge or information.
Right. I'll take that one. That's an area that we're trying to get into next, right? Maybe because personally for me, I have 2 teenagers, and one is definitely going to college and one is a visual learner, I'll put it that way. So that's what made me think about it. So we are trying to have those conversations with, well, we're in the very infancy stages, but we need to have a conversation with state ed, because they are the keepers of all the guidance counselor information, and then we can give out that information so it can be disseminated, because we recognize that there are some kids with learning disabilities in high school that have 0 interest in going to college, but they want to work, right? And so we want to get that information out there so that the high school students know about this program, and especially if they have an IEP, which is something else that we forgot to mention. IEPs don't have to be current. So if you have an IEP plan from high school and it is you graduated 6 years ago, we will take that IEP, because if you were dyslexic 6 years ago, you're probably still dyslexic now. So we will take that documentation. Did I answer your question? We're working on it. Yes, so there's a civil service put out a bunch of informational YouTube videos on just accessing jobs in the state, how to apply for jobs. I believe, is there a 55B one? Not yet. We're working on it, right, yeah. So we have a ton of information out there. No, sorry. We love questions.
So you mentioned a IEP, even though it may have been several years ago. You can submit an IEP in replace of the medical documents? that
Correct.
we saw? Wow.
The reason why we say yes, you can submit the IEP in lieu of medical documents is because you had to go through all these things to get the IEP. You had to be evaluated, you had to go through all the things, and the IEP tells us what the issue is, what accommodations you may need, what testing accommodations you will need, so we do take it. I'm coming.
So if we send an IEP or have the family send an IEP or the student, but we also have current, like a psychoed evaluation, you would probably want that as well?
We will take any documentation that will help the physician assist in approving the application. So the more you give us, the better. It's not, sometimes that form, that DPM 60, other time, applicants will submit an addendum, like a more detailed letter, that's fine as well, yeah.
We are at time, but we will stay back and answer any questions that anybody has. So I am going to put up our contact information up here.
Nicole, we have one more last question.
Okay, sure.
I know you said you were looking at education requirements. Are you taking any look at like the job descriptions and responsibilities to make sure they truly line up with responsibilities and they're not unnecessarily excluding people with disabilities?
I'll take that question. So our office sits in on examination, we call them scope conferences. And in those scope conferences, it's not just diversity and inclusion, there's staffing, there's testing. And staffing really does go through the job description to see if that is really necessary. So they are making steps towards that. And experience as well. You will see now that postings not just, they used to say when I started experience, and then it was experience and then education, and then it just became exclusively education. So now we're taking both, experience and education. Did I answer your question? Good. All right, my friends, we will stay back for any questions. Thank you all, and we appreciate you. Have a great day.